Well, Tom, let's start with you. What motivated you to start to take part in this show alone?
Oh man, I've been a fan of that show for 10 years. I've watched it avidly since before I set up Desert Island Survival. And I think a lot of us, I mean, it's a very Marmite thing, but many of us have a innate kind of primal desire to go back to that simple existence and to live that way. And I'd always had the curiosity. And I think as I've developed skills over the last 7 years with Desert Island Survival, you want to put them to the test. You learn this stuff, you teach this stuff, but you never use it in anger. It's almost like someone who, in the military, people that learn stuff, they have this perverse kind of desire to go to war. It's maybe a crude analogy, but I wanted to see if it would work and if I could do it. So I'd never done any temperate woodland survival. It's always tropical. And I wanted to test my skills.
That's brilliant. Well, congratulations on winning it.
Thanks.
What an achievement. So what are the secrets to success when it comes to living like a Neanderthal?
I think you've got to get really fat. I put on freestone in 7 weeks before going out there, because I think one of the things you realise is that calories are the money of nature. Every decision I made out in the wilderness was really an equation of like, is it worth the calories spent for what it would get me back? So like when I was making my chimney, I had to go and collect all these rocks and clay and build this thing, and it took me like 7 days. And I reckon that cost me like a 12,000 calorie expense. And it's like, is that going to give me enough, obviously warmth in my shelter, and also that comfort that it offers as well, the mental kind of help. And I wanted to be out there like deep into the winter. It ended earlier than I expected, but just 10 days after it ended, it was minus 22, and I would have been like properly bedded into my shelter. So I think it was worthwhile to be there long term. So yeah, like Neanderthals need calories, and also I think they need a good mindset as well. Like positivity and optimism play a big part too.
Yeah, exactly. And I know from watching the show that a lot of the other contestants really suffered with the sense of isolation. And I think quite a few phoned that helicopter to get them out of there, because they were just missing their loved ones so much. But you seem to really power through it. I'm sure you did miss your family, but
Yeah.
I think you ended up, you were out there for how long in the end?
I mean, I was in the wilderness for 35 days,
Yeah.
and I was out there I was 2 months away from my family. But I knew, I compartmentalized it. I knew I was going off on a mission. Many people do, in the military and stuff, go off and know that you're going to be, I knew I was going to be back. So yeah, it didn't hurt me too much. I missed them, but I was on a mission.
Yeah. And what training did you receive from the production company?
So we got out there 10 days beforehand. We all hung out with the other contestants. There was 12 of us, because they had 2 backups. In fact, one of the backups had to go in because a guy accidentally put an axe into his leg after 4 hours of his axe. And so they basically, the whole production, they wanted to make sure that we were going to come back with a show. So there's a lot of camera training, because we're making this thing for them. We had to do some medical training, like catastrophic bleeds, like tourniquets and such, if you put an axe in your leg. And we learned about the wild edibles there, like foraging and identifying different flora and fauna, and bear evasion as well, like what to do with certain animals if a moose wanders into your camp or gets stuck between a bear and its cubs and things
What
like
are you
that.
supposed to do?
Well, we were luckily mostly, if it's a brown bear, you play dead. We have mostly black bears, which you've got to make yourself as loud as possible and big as possible. We were given an air horn, pepper spray, bear bangers, and you basically just kind of shoo it away. But yeah, as long as you don't corner one, they're generally all right.
Okay.
Brown lay down, black fight back.
Exactly.
You don't want to
And
get the wrong way round.
White good night.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So, Pierre, how do you think you would have fared in the Canadian wilderness?
So I've been a fan of the show.
Yeah. I've seen your shelter.
I love this. I built a shelter. I did this
wow.
with a friend of mine. I just showed him.
Yeah.
So I somewhere think I would do all right. I also think the magic of this show is that at least all these overconfident masculine energy makes you think, like, God, I could do that.
Yeah.
But then you see it and you realize it's bloody hard. And I think I'd be on the phone maybe quite quick.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would have lasted a night in reality.
Yeah. But
What-
it looks stunning. It just is, there's
it's
so much there.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Definitely. Now, interest in travel to Canada has reportedly increased after shows such as Alone and Race Across the World. What travel trends is Kayak observing for next year and beyond? When you're looking at search data, what emerging destinations are you seeing an interest in?
Yeah, we, like yourself, we're in love with travel trends. We get so much data because Kayak has enough volume to analyze it. Couple of things. The Asia Pacific region opened up later than any other region after COVID, and it's been just in such wild demand all the way through this year, and it's still going. So I see that play a big role in next year. Trends to Africa as a holiday destination are picking up. Places like Morocco and Ghana and Nigeria, which is awesome because that's what traveling away is about. There's some funny trends. There's set jetting. Does anybody know what that is? Has anybody seen White Lotus?
Yes.
Everybody.
Who hasn't?
Right? There's this thing where you go to a location you first encountered, often on television. So maybe it's somewhere in the Canadian wilderness, but it could be Emily in Paris that finally makes you want to see Paris, or Taylor Swift show brings you all over the world and you want to go and follow that. So I think that's a very fascinating development and a really happy, positive way to travel.
Yeah, I wonder whether the power of TV shows now is going to be even more influential than social media for inspiring people to actually go to certain places. I think there's a lot of potential for it. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what comes next. Now, back to you, Tom. What didn't we see on camera in terms of your experience of Alone? Are there any kind of things that weren't actually included in the show?
One thing that's on the American show that they didn't show on this one, weirdly, was that we get a medical. So we do have one little bit of human contact. So every 7 days you get a medical for 20 minutes or so, which is amazing. Like when you're starved of human contact and you just get to talk to someone, they don't answer back much, but it doesn't matter. That was really nice. And in fact, like, you really feel their absence afterwards, and I heard that a few people tapped out the day after their medicals because that palpable absence is really intense, and you realize, I do miss humanity pretty badly. So they didn't show that. They didn't show. I caught 36 fish. Like, to be known, I caught 36 fish, not 2. And they tried to make it look like I was very hungry and suffering. And they also didn't show that I caught a duck on day 25, completely accidentally, in my net. And oh my god, that duck. When you've only eaten pike, boiled pike and leaves and berries, and you eat a duck, like on a normal day, duck tastes amazing to me. It's one of my favorite foods. But when your senses are so heightened and yeah, you've just had this restricted diet, oh my god, I think I wept in the pan. I mean, like, hunger is the best sauce, and this will always be better than like any triple Michelin style meal because of that intensity of hunger. And now it's very bougie, but the 25th of September will always be my duck day. I'm going to hold on.
That's fantastic. I think it's an important reminder as well for people working in the luxury travel space to think about appreciation and how sometimes the key to true enjoyment is denial, perhaps. Now, Pip, what have been some of your most formative travel experiences, would you say, over the years?
Yeah, I've been so fortunate to travel a lot, and so many of them come to mind for little bits and pieces that they've given me. Altogether, they just give you a perspective, and it puts everything into perspective, partly through the contrast of every now and then you got a lot of this, but you have none of that. And afterwards, if you flip it around, that's when you only see the value. One thing that many of them have in common is some dramatic nature. I love mountains, but I also love the ocean, and being out there, if you contrast it for a second with an office building, just makes you feel so small, which is a great feeling, makes you feel very alive to realize that your laptop or your phone or your next notification is not that important. It kind of bleaks in comparison to a big glacier or an avalanche or something like that. So yeah, I need a fix of that, and I get it regularly enough to feel that's what shapes me to an extent.
And so you live in the Netherlands, and I've just got to say, both these guys have flown in to London for this. Here's in the Netherlands. Netherlands, and Tom lives in Lisbon. So we're super lucky to have these guys here, I think. Yeah, thank you. But so when you're out in the elements, you know, clinging to a rock face, I know you do a lot of mountain climbing. What does this do to your mind? Can you talk a little bit more about that? And also, I'm really interested in what mountain climbing can teach you about business. I feel like you have some interesting perspectives on this.
Yeah, one thing that's hard about daily life in business is just the tremendous amount of competing impulses, which I think is actually the same in normal life, right? You can feel your phone, and you know you've got emails unanswered, and you have appointments and things you need to write down and not forget. If you go into mountainous environments in an adventure setting, the priorities kind of present themselves, and you have to do no work yourself to decide which one to do. It's brought to you, and it really clears everything up. So very often, I don't realize it when I'm there, but if I go climbing 5 hours later, you come back and only then you realize, wow, I didn't think about anything for 5 hours. I was just not quite surviving, but I was definitely dealing with the task at hand. That to me is a tremendous force of nature that I don't seem to be able to get anywhere else. And I bet there's people that are better at this than I am, that get it through meditation or something else they do, but for me this is my way to get it.
Yeah. Do you find it helps with problem solving? Do you feel like you have moments of clarity in terms of like your professional decision making?
Yeah, this is such a great question, because the answer is a screaming yes.
Yeah.
I think I can only be 100% at something after not being 100% at it. And if you're 100% at it for too long, it'll start to fade away. So I can be really awake, really creative after having been very asleep.
Yeah.
Or does that make sense?
Yeah.
So tapping in and out of all types of different experiences for me brings out the best in all of them.
Yeah.
If I would drag myself to work every day like you did for a while, eventually you lose all your potential. And oh yeah, this is critical. And you can do it in a tiny way. You really can. You can do it on a daily basis. And I want to get better at that, but that's probably more achievable for most.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you. Tom, what were some of the most profound learning experiences for you when you were out in the wilderness?
It really ties into what Pierre was saying, to be honest. I went into it with this excitement of putting my skills to the test. What I didn't realise what I was going to get from it was this real kind of understanding of awareness of that I am a Paleolithic animal effectively living in this modern society, which is quite unnatural. And there's quite a few examples of it. Once I got my food taken care of and I started smoking fish and I had like effectively money in the bank and I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck and I was starting to kind of thrive out there a bit, my mind, I was living in this meditative state. I felt this clarity, this joy. Like, I'm a happy guy. I thought I was really happy, but it turns out my scale of happiness goes further, and I experienced the highest highs of my life out there. And it was immensely cathartic for me, for my mind. And it wasn't just my mind, my body too. I think going back to that very simple Paleolithic diet as well, of just literally living off, I mean, it was dull, but living off boiled fish and leaves and berries and nothing else really. My body changed. Like, I normally would get irritable bowel syndrome. I had 20 years of my life. It went away and it hasn't come back a year later. And so I think my gut flora had this whole resetting. And I also think I had a thing called autophagy, which is when your body eats damaged parts of your body, of cells that are kind of damaged through a state of fasting, low glucose diets and all this stuff. Like, I'm writing this whole thing about all of these observations, but I realized that I really need a lot less to be happy, and some kind of simple tweaks I can make in my day-to-day life to be optimized. Yeah, this is my real takeaway.
And what about a sense of fear? Because obviously we're talking a little bit about the presence of bears out there, and it honestly really looked very, very scary at night when, for some of those other contestants, they had bears sniffing around their camps. For you, did you encounter any bears? And what was it like at night? Did you have period hours where you were lying there feeling frightened, or did you feel pretty in control of the situation? How did you cope?
I think my optimistic lens really helps me. I got there and I was like, this is a kind place and it's going to look after me. And I could have if I had a pessimistic lens, I could be like, this is a foreboding place, and any minute now a bear's going to jump out, and I'm not going to find food. So what's the point in even trying? But I think, I don't know, I felt this generosity of spirit from my land. It's quite, maybe almost naive, but it helped me. I saw one bear on the other side of the river. Everyone else seemed to be inundated with them. I don't know why. I had very few bears. The first few nights when you've just got a tarp and open sides and you don't know if it's beary, and your brain, you know, even if we sleep in a new hotel room, your brain kind of keeps half awake in new environments. It's again like a Paleolithic throwback. The first few days I wasn't sleeping very deeply, but once I had walls on my shelter, and also just didn't see many bears, I slept like 11 hours solid every night. And again, that's,
I think that had to have contributed to your success. I'm sure of it. Now, in the podcast, you talk about why the phrase "fake it till you make it" is bad advice, in your opinion. Why do you think it's better to embrace one's self-perceived weaknesses and vulnerabilities and be authentic?
I wish it would go without saying, but I can still hear people say this: fake it till you make it. So many things, right? I think it's very stressful to pretend. I think it's very unhealthy for your mental health to not feel like you can be who you are, which the road right now in terms of individualism in a way is embracing. Like the diversity of anybody. Everybody should be able to bring their full selves to work or to anywhere else in their life.
And that's such a recent thing, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's still developing. So it's still very hard for certain people, unfortunately. And we make it harder by telling people to fake it till you make it. I've got a bit of beef with that phrase. Another really big reason that I think is critical is I think there's some real beauty in teams excelling, in the sum of parts being much bigger than the individuals, and you won't get there until you realize I'm bad at this, but you're good at that, but you're bad at that, and I'm good at that, and together we're good at everything. So the idea that everybody's good at something, nobody's good at everything, but together we can be kind of good at everything, that's stunning to me. It's the fun of working in teams, and you won't get there when people are faking it till they're making it. You get there when people say, hey, I suck at this. Are you good at this? Because that would be great. And you can do that part. I can do this part. And together we can be very successful. So teams is a big part of my enjoyment in work. And they happen when people are willing to be vulnerable.
And what about for entrepreneurs? Because I think we are entering the age of the entrepreneur these days. Everyone sort of at least has a dream of a side hustle, or is exploring a side hustle, or is building a business, or, you know, like, and you until you've kind of established yourself, you are sometimes feeling like you are faking it until you make it. Like, what advice would you give entrepreneurs in that sense?
I think you need to be positive, which might be almost the most critical thing. And there's a huge parallel there. The way you go into something in terms of your own energy and attitude prescribes the outcome for 50-60%. If positivity or happy ambition is a way of not fake it till you make it, but have hope that you'll make it, I'm all for it. As an entrepreneur, when you start to get going and you reach an area of your business where you need to excel and you're not good at it, please don't fake it till you make it. Please find somebody who's good at it and lean on them, find support, etc. Because it's lethal if you don't.
Have hope that you'll make it.
Like for sure. No, I'm all about optimism. But there's something, as soon as it gets phony, that's when stuff starts to break.
Okay. Good advice. So Tom, tell us briefly a little bit more about your company, Desert Island Survival, and what's coming next for your business.
So we run expeditions on uninhabited desert islands in Panama, Philippines, and Tonga. For the first 5 days on the island, it's like survival light for people, where we're easing them into this new environment and we're teaching them the fundamentals of bushcraft: shelter, water, fire, food, and they're sleeping in hammocks and we're feeding them. Just as they're getting a bit too comfortable, we kick them out the nest to a new part of the island, and they have a machete, handful of fish hooks, and they have to survive for 3 days. And after that, rescued and luxury accentuated, I think, as we were talking about, they have this new appreciation for modern convenience, and it's like a gratitude reset for them. we're looking at new destinations right now in Indonesia. I'm going to Guinea-Bissau in December. I'm not sure it's going to work out, but we'll see. And then not so island related, but considering a alone experience. So on the back of the TV show for people, the armchair survivors who say, "I can do that. Come on, let's have a go." And so yeah, perhaps doing that in Scandinavia or Canada or both.
Fantastic. How much do these trips to the desert island cost?
It's £3,000 for 10 days, and you
Yeah.
can't spend any money when you're on the island. No taxis or restaurants.
Yeah, I'm very curious about trying it. I don't know how I'd fare in reality.
Everyone needs to try
But
it
I
at least
kind
once.
of really want to sign up for one. And yeah, moving back to you, Pia, I'd like to ask a bit about Kayak. And obviously, it's a pretty major company these days. How big is it? And in what ways does Kayak still have a startup culture, even though it's such a huge enterprise?
Yeah, Kayak's, I think Kayak's big.
Yeah.
Feels big by now. Yeah, we turn 20 next year.
Yeah.
And it started with nothing, with a great idea and a lot of energy and positivity. We're 7 brands right now. We've got 14 offices. We've got more than 1,000 employees. We've got millions of users doing billions of what we call queries, travel searches, where people try to find themselves information about routes, prices, anything really, more and more these days. So yeah, that feels large. We're trying desperately to hold on to a startup culture because I think startup culture has a lot of beauty to it. We need people to believe that great ideas can come from anywhere, because that's true. And if as a company you lose that and people feel they can't speak up anymore, you lose like almost all your insight if it becomes a boardroom making decisions together.
Yeah.
So we try to inspire people to take bold decisions, to come up with crazy ideas, to make mistakes, learn from them, try to not make them again. But sure enough, mistakes should be part of the deal if we keep on developing. Yeah, it's one of the biggest things that give me joy about working for Kayak is this culture that is still very young.
So you're very much encouraging your employees to come to you with new ideas.
Oh, yeah.
And you're ever evolving.
Yeah, oh yeah, and try stuff as well. And
Yeah.
every now and then you're gonna, we say, ask for forgiveness, not for permission.
Okay.
Like sometimes just try stuff, right? And if you feel stuck, we're very allergic to bureaucracy,
Yeah.
even though we're 1,000 people, and sometimes you need some of it. So there's a balancing act there. But trying to keep things simple, simplicity is so powerful.
Oh yeah, you
And
talked
if
about
you-
that on the podcast.
If you
and
lose
that's very
simplicity
profound.
because you end up half your time having to get aligned and coordinate and get people up to speed and make sure you've gotten too much consensus. Oh man, that's when things start to fall apart.
Yeah, it kills innovation,
Yeah,
really, doesn't
very
it?
much. Yeah,
Because a new idea is quite fragile,
Yeah.
I think, often. And
Yeah.
it can be really easily crushed. And I think probably most people in that room have had that experience at work. of
yeah,
sort
and
of
a big
thinking,
one.
got a good idea, and
Yeah.
someone's like, oh, it's totally impractical
There's
or whatever.
Cool
and that's dead.
research now about psychological safety, which has
Yeah.
been a bit of a hype for the last 10 years. But how you lead by example, inviting ideas, and the way you respond, even if it's nonverbal, is really what's going to allow the next person, yes or no, to stick up their hand.
Yeah.
So I try to applaud anybody that says, hey, if you don't understand it, stick up your hand, say, I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Please don't fake it till you make it that you
Exactly.
do understand it. Just be honest and be vulnerable, and then amazing things are going to come out.
Yeah, and this isn't in the script, but I just listened to How to Fail with Marina Abramovich, famous artist, and I don't know if anyone else listened to this episode yet, but she talks about ideas and she works with her students. She says, you know, every month or whatever, they sit at the table and they have to spend an hour writing down ideas for, I guess, works of art or anything. And the ideas that they don't like, they'd crumple up and throw in the waste paper basket, you know, and they keep all the good ideas. And then they, after a month, you know, they gather all of the pieces of paper together. But what Marina Abramovich does is she says, I don't want to see any of the pieces of paper that you kept on the table. I want to go through the bin. And all the best ideas are in the bin, she said, because they're the ones that people felt too scared, probably, or something was holding them back from, you know, actually thinking that that would be a good idea or viable in some way. And that really stuck with me.
Perfectionism's the enemy of progress, kind of thing.
Yes. breakthroughs. This is good. Tom, why do ultra high net worth travelers benefit from suffering? Can you talk a little bit more about this?
So yeah, I mean, in the past, we've had everyone come on our trip from students, painters, decorators to Russian billionaires with super yachts. And like talking to one of the Russian billionaires back in 2019, he was saying that he had stopped feeling the joy of the best hotels in the world and his super yachts, and he needed that time as a kind of gratitude reset. And I think it's really good what we were just saying earlier, this luxury accentuator, getting that perspective. And so we're all, looking at Maslow's hierarchy and like, let's get to level 5 self-actualization. But I think there's so much that can be done actually turning it around and going back to basics and getting perspective, not just on how far we've come as a species, but on what really matters and what is important, and being grateful for what we have. So I think that shift can really help them to enjoy their riches more.
Yeah, and do you get a lot of wealthy people signing up for the desert island survival experiences?
Yeah, we've had a fair amount, and the typical demographic is, we get a lot of people who are doing well and working at tech companies, who Googles and Facebooks, but it's hard to pigeonhole. Like, we have a real broad spectrum of customers.
Now let's do some blue sky thinking. Pia, how do you think AI will change the way we plan and book travel in years to come? And I'd love to also hear about Kayak's integration of ChatGPT.
Yeah, AI is kind of moving past the peak in the hype curve.
Yeah.
Don't you all feel? What's kind of big? I think it's going to be big.
Yeah.
I like the idea that not a single idea like that suddenly can break everything. I've never seen it really before, maybe the iPhone. But I'm very excited about it. Generative AI. I think conversational interfaces are still so much easier than typing. Everybody speaks faster than they type. If you can get to a place where we can converse with technology the way we now converse with each other, that's real progress, and there's huge opportunity there. Kayak recognizes that. Kayak has a wealth of knowledge that no human can comprehend because it's data in a database. You can now bring it out of that database with filters and prompts and search boxes, and it's a lot of fun to work with Kayak and spend some time on Kayak. If we can make that much easier, that would be fantastic. We are by nature an early mover with this type of stuff. We were very early on Alexa and on Siri prompts, and we're trying to be very early here again, because it's where you learn the most. We've built an integration with ChatGPT on them. If you ask ChatGPT, where can I fly from London for less than $500, and I need a sunny place, then ChatGPT is going to generate very smart, insightful responses using Kayak's data to answer those types of questions. We now have on Kayak a piece of generative AI called Best Time to Travel, which is on the homepage. You can find it right there. It uses all kinds of data about crowd management, about temperatures and weather, flight prices, distances, etc., to give you the best time to travel if you know your destination. So if I want to go to Lisbon for a visit and you tell me next month's pretty, Kayak can actually go and sense check whether that's true. Which is
so is that real-time data with actual? It's
real-time data pulling in tons of data sources, partly with help from ChatGPT that we're partnering with on this. It's a level of interaction between a user and the data that, if you think of classic old school search interfaces in which I use a keyboard, would be a ton of work for me to go and explain in a search box what I'm looking for. But if I can say, hey, what's the best time to travel? And the technology can sift through this data to find me the answers, that's really powerful. And I hope it goes much further. I hope in 10 years, none of us are typing stuff to computers anymore, but we finally figure out how to do text-based conversational interfaces with technology that understands me the way you understand me. So yeah.
So it would be the equivalent of speaking to a human travel advisor, having a conversation about your trip. But
then one that has the knowledge of all travel advisors in the world, which is what technology already has. But you have to now learn how to talk to them through search interfaces, and it would be amazing if generative AI can take that away. And I've got a lot of hope that it does, and that will be part of it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Some of
yeah.
the humans in the room might be a little bit concerned about this, but
Yeah.
I mean, but I think the one thing, the differentiator is that the human advisor, let's say, has actually potentially been to that place and seen the hotel and explored the destination, will be able to give those first-hand insights of the island and the Canadian wilderness.
Oh, yeah.
And like, in a way, like the two have to coexist and will be able to coexist because they have different strengths and weaknesses. So, and the human will be able to use AI as a tool.
Yeah, for sure. And you can
Hopefully
also
won't replace
filter.
everybody.
You can filter very easily, both in the generative AI space as well as on the normal web interface, to what types of recommendations are more relevant for you. And I do this already when I look for restaurants on OpenTable or anywhere else. Like, do I want to see the scores that were given by the stag night party? Not really. Like, if I'm in a different mindset myself, I'd rather see the reviews from the people that came there with kids if I'm going there with kids. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, there's absolutely a space that you can fence off. I want it to be relevant for me and in the person I am right now.
Yeah,
It might be
really
very
interesting.
different than me a weekend from now when I'm planning a trip with somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, super interesting. I feel like I could quiz you all
I
evening
find it
about
super
AI,
interesting too.
but, I also
yeah.
want to hear about the islands. And Tom, tell us about your dream for preserving desert islands for future generations. And what it meant for you to travel with your son, who I think is 6, is that right? To Indonesia recently.
Yeah, he was 6 at the time. He just turned 7. Just had his
Oh.
birthday last week. Yeah, I mean, you got to dream big, right? So
Yeah,
I've got this
definitely.
lofty kind of long-term goal of how I can help to preserve the wilderness. I've got a deep gratitude and debt to nature. We're really privileged to go to uninhabited islands that are still very untouched. We'll see like crab migrations of 20,000 crabs going across, or nesting turtles, and it's a privilege, to see it how it always was and how it meant to be. And I can see like new hotels springing up, and I know that the sphere of influence of tourism is coming for us, and I know that one day it will not be as it is. And so I've got this kind of like dream to kind of crowdfund and fractionalize the purchase of islands, and say like, I don't know, 5,000 people, 2,000 each, we can buy 10 million islands, and we can preserve that. And I was also looking at the NFT space, like instead of flexing your wealth with a, I don't know, picture of a bored ape or something, why not show that you care about the planet, and that you that you saved a bit of wilderness, and it could be the Amazon or wherever it may be. So it's a lofty goal, but like I would like to look at a preservation business that did some kind of
I think that's so
fractional
exciting.
crowdfunding there. And yeah, we just got back from Indonesia. First, my son's always like watched stuff on YouTube, and he's always not quite knowing what daddy does, and so to share it with him on the island was beautiful, and he took to it like a duck to water. I think children are so malleable, and it's a very natural state to be. Like I was saying, we're kind of Paleolithic people born into the captivity of modern society, but kids aren't so much. And he just, he was just making toys out of coconuts and playing, and yeah, I look forward to hopefully passing the baton to him one day. When he turns 15, he has to survive on a desert island with just a machete and a set of and that would be like his coming of age.
Yes,
And I feel like
exactly.
we don't have coming of age experiences. Every tribe in every corner of the world independently came to this conclusion that we need a coming of age experience, and we don't have it in the West. And like, you have all this pent up energy that maybe ancestrally was for us to leave our nest and go elsewhere, but now we just drive Vauxhall Novas fast and get high.
Go to a nightclub.
I think, I feel like we need to channel that energy for better use in modern society.
Definitely. Can you just quickly talk, we go into this in the podcast, but about how you select the islands and how difficult it is to actually find proper desert islands in the world that are also suitable for these kinds of experiences?
Yeah. We've going 7 years, and we've still only found 3 islands so far that tick all the boxes. So I talk about it as being like the Goldilocks zone when you're looking for extraterrestrial life. You want places that are just close enough to tourism that we've at least got good transport connections and nice hotel for that afterwards feeling, and a hospital in case of an evacuation. But then it can't be too close that it breaks that illusion of isolation, and you've got boats coming past and lights on the horizon. So just finding that thin veil is really, really hard, and it grows every year as tourism gets more popular. And then after that, you then have to check how safe it is. So like we don't want, like southern Philippines, you've got pirates, and you've got pit vipers in parts of Indonesia, and then after all that, it's got to be beautiful, and then it's got to have enough resources, and then it's got to be affordable. There's many islands in Fiji that I found that ticked all these boxes, and they're like, yeah, that'd be 50 grand a week, and it's just not going to work out. And so, and then finding the right owner is extremely difficult. So many people are very happy to take your money and say that they own the island, and they really don't. Which we found to our detriment, first of all, in Panama.
Oh no.
And so yeah, it's really tough to find pristine desert islands.
Yeah.
But worth
Yeah.
it.
Well, definitely have to preserve them. I think that's a
do.
really important thing. Now we're going to finish with a final question to both of you. With obviously climate change, war, over tourism, all these massive issues threatening our planet, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future of travel?
I'm very optimistic about travel. I think it's just such a force for good in the world. We end up talking much more than I normally do about how it can be so enriching for an individual to break out of your natural habitat and see this contrast and make yourself think and feel again when you go back into something. For groups, I've always seen how travel gives you perspective, or makes you appreciate the differences in the world. It really can open your eyes. So I think travel does that like nothing else. Gives you perspective of what you have, gives you gratitude on what you have that somebody else doesn't, and the other way around. So I'm a fan of travel altogether. When it comes to sustainability, what we've seen in our research is that people are so eager to do right. A large group of people actually wants to travel more thoughtfully and wants to understand better how to do well, but a massive part of that group doesn't know how to.
Yeah.
And that's where meta-search and the data that Kayak has actually can play a huge role. And the filters right now allow you to select and prioritize your results or deselect your results based on a type of travel that you don't want, regardless or depending on who you are, because we all have different desires and we want to include or exclude different bits and pieces. But empowering people to do more thoughtful travel, I think, is a huge role we can play, and it's going to make a big difference if people feel empowered to select travel that way. Together we can make a big dent.
I'm happy to hear
Yeah.
that. Tom, what are your thoughts?
I mean, of course I'm optimistic.
Yes.
It's my default mode. But yeah, undoubtedly there's some headwinds in the short term. Post-COVID, I don't think we've got quite back to the same levels of travel. And more and more people, I think, are maybe less inclined to do traditional travel, but I feel like the vertical that I'm in it's kind of aligned to the wellness space as well. People are looking more for self-development and introspection, and so I feel confident that I'm at least in a growth area. But I don't think travel as a whole, like you say, like it's such a significant part of us and who we are. I don't see it in any way being a long-term challenge whatsoever.
Well, it employs more than 1 in 10 people globally. Massive industry. I just think there's so much potential for building that as a force for good in the world. So yeah, we'll end on that note and we'll head to the bar, I think. But thank you so much for your attention and for being here. And yeah, big thanks to Hugh and Tom as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.